Every year in the United States alone, 47,000 people die by suicide. 47,000. That's one every 10 minutes. That means at this moment in time, in this country, someplace, somewhere, somebody has less than 10 minutes to live. That is my why. Of those 47,000, one medical professional, doctor, dentist, veterinarian, hygienist, will die by suicide per day, every day. The good news is you can make a difference, you can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here, and that is starting the conversation. Now, you may be asking yourself at this moment, this may be the elephant in the room, a comedian talking about depression and suicide. How does that work? I get that a lot. I believe I am a good choice because A, I believe where there's humor, there's hope, where there's laughter, there's life, that nobody dies laughing. Depression and suicide run in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I will spare you the details. If you want to know, it's in my first TED Talk. You go to franktedtalk.com. It's there. And I myself have come close enough to dying by suicide that I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. Spoiler alert, I didn't pull the trigger. It's okay to laugh. I say that every time I keynote, and last month I was keynoting, a friend was in the audience, he came up, he'd never heard me say that before. And he goes, "Hey man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" I'm like, "Hey man, could you try to sound a little less disappointed?" Yeah. By the way, the reason I did not pull the trigger is also in that very first TED Talk. I do have 5 TED Talks, 4 on YouTube now. I got one more I'm going to be doing in Colorado and in Durango in November. It's a little lighter, a little funnier, and I'm not making this up. It's called Mental Health and the Orgasm, Treating Your Depression Single-Handedly. Yeah. It's kind of a one-man show. I'm just a DIY kind of guy, if you know what I'm saying. Oh, come on, you can't tell me what a big day in your life when you discover that little one-piece home entertainment center. Come on. Yeah. Anybody's first thought? Anybody go off by accident the first time? Yeah. Yeah. I had to apply to 12 TEDx's before somebody would let me do that, so that's Durango, Colorado. TED Talk. I know some people are thinking, "No, wait a minute, a comedian with 5 TED Talks? How does that happen?" You know, TED Talks, I don't know if you know this, but it's an idea worth spreading. And Seth Godin said, if you're looking for an idea worth spreading, you just need 2 things. You need to find your tribe, and you need to find a vacuum. My tribe is people who live with depression and for whom the option of suicide is always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. It's called chronic suicidal ideation or chronic suicidality. And when I say a solution for problems large and small, my car broke down 3 years ago. I had 3 thoughts unbidden. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy a new. And 3, I could just kill myself. That's chronic suicidality. And it sounds absurd, but every time I speak, or almost every time I speak, somebody comes up afterwards, sometimes more than one somebody, and they have chronic suicidality. They did not know it had a name. They thought they were just some kind of freak. I was at Jumpstart last year. I finished speaking. Everybody's filing out. A woman's coming toward me. I notice she's crying. She gets close enough to me, she's weeping. She cannot speak. I said, "You've got chronic suicidality." She nods. I said, "You didn't know it had a name." She nods. I said, "You just thought you were some kind of freak." She nods. I said, "Well, do me a favor. Do you have a therapist?" She nods. "When you get home, set an appointment. Go see your therapist. Tell your therapist what you learned today, and for God's sakes, tell him you Googled it. Don't tell him you learned it from a comedian." She nods. A week later, I got an email. She said, "Frank, I believe I was at that dental event in large part just to meet you, and you changed my life." And I cannot say that about a lot of people. That is my why. Now, the vacuum is that even though 47,000 people die, 1 every 10 minutes, hardly anybody's talking about it, which I find fascinating because the mere mention of the words depression and suicide out loud elicits the most amazing responses from people, some of whom I've just met. I do comedy on cruise ships. I'll be doing it, as a matter of fact, on Saturday night, right before the karaoke. I'm on a cruise ship. I can't find a place to sit for breakfast. There's a woman, table for 2, chair, empty. I point, she nods, I sit. She looks up, she goes, "Hey, are you the comedian?" I said, "Hey, did you enjoy the show?" She said, "I did." I said, "Then I'm the comedian." She goes, "What would you have said if I told you I hated the show?" They tell me I look a lot like him. She goes, comedy all you do? I said, no, I'm a public speaker. If you don't mind me bragging a bit, I just nailed down a TED Talk. She goes, I love the TED Talk. What's the topic? I'd had this conversation many times. I said, it's depression and suicide. Started to count down in my head. 3, 2, 1. She says, I tried to kill myself twice. We just met. First time in college, not that serious. Second time, what?
Sorry. That was good.
Yeah, that wasn't a punchline, by the way. You sick bastard. Yeah. God. Yeah. That's, yeah. Alrighty. Yeah. It's not first. This is not his first bad decision. Look at the hair. Bless your heart. Okay, now. Yeah. Second time, far more serious. She said, I graduated college, graduated medical school. I had the knowledge, I had the equipment. She said, Frank, I had an IV started in my ankle. Suicide cocktail in the one hand, syringe in the other, getting ready to load it up. Phone rings. Now she thinks, should I pick it up? She thought, yeah, better, because it might be somebody worried, come over, interrupt. Picked up, 13-year-old son. She goes, I don't know if you heard something in my voice or had a premonition, but he said, Mom, don't do anything. So she said, I didn't. Didn't give up on the idea of suicide, but was not going to do it that day because I knew he would always feel guilty. Wasn't there something he could say or do to stop me from dying by suicide? Here's the good news. There are things you could say. There are things you could do. We'll talk about it in a second. I said, how old is he now? She says, 21. I said, does he know his phone call saved your life? She said this. How do you start that conversation? You do a TED Talk. That became the theme of my TED Talk. Now, let's start the conversation on depression and thoughts of suicide. People ask me, how do you know if somebody's depressed? This is not a complete list, but sleeps too much, can't sleep, eats too much, can't eat. Lets their personal hygiene go, including their teeth. Has difficulty getting up in the morning, rallies in the afternoon. People say, what do you say to somebody like, here's what you don't say. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, turn that frown upside down. Have you tried fish oil? Here's what you do say. I'm here for you and mean it. I know you're not crazy, lazy, or self-absorbed. I know that mental illness is an illness. Here's the good news. With time and treatment, things will get better. I will take the time. I will help you get the treatment and mean it. And then you got to ask that question. Are you having thoughts of suicide? If you can't ask it, find somebody who can. And you know, there's an old urban legend. You should never mention the S word, suicide, in front of somebody who is depressed, because I love this. It might give them the idea. Suicide, what a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Trust me, it's crossed their mind. Now, let's say they don't admit they're suicidal. How do you know? What kind of behaviors? Talking about death and dying, Googling death and dying. Death and dying appears in their artwork, their writing, their music. They begin to gather the means, a gun, stockpiling pills. They're giving away prized possessions because they want to make sure they go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. Here's a counterintuitive one. They're depressed, happy for no apparent reason. Maybe because they've chosen time, place, method, and they know the pain is finite. That's what suicide is all about. People say to me, why did he want to kill himself? Chances are he or she did not want to kill themselves. I did not want to kill myself. I just wanted to stop the pain. Having a mental illness is like being that Greek character Sisyphus who has to roll a rock up a hill every day. It gets near the top, rolls back down. Every morning you wake up with a mental illness, there's a rock in a hill. Some days the rock is small, hill's not so steep. Some days the rock is a boulder and the hill is Mount Kilimanjaro. But every day there's a rock in a hill, and the day comes when you can no longer move the rock. That's what I'm here to prevent. Now, here's what you don't say to somebody who you believe is suicidal. You're just looking for attention. You're being melodramatic. Nobody who talks about it ever does it. Actually, 90% of the people who are thinking about suicide give you hints, direct and indirect, in the week leading up to a suicide. You just have to know what to look for. So what do you say if they are suicidal? Do you have a plan? What is your plan? If the plan is detailed, you need to get them on the phone with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline or texting to the Suicide Prevention text line. The good news is you can make a difference, you can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as we're doing right here, right now, and that is start the conversation so when they wake up in the morning, they can still move the rock before their time runs out. Thank you. Oh, thanks.